Welcome in. Today, we're taking a closer look at the Eisenhower dollar, a coin that seems ordinary until you start examining the details collectors use to separate common examples from truly exceptional ones. First coin, there is something unusually powerful about the 1976 Eisenhower Bicentennial dollar. It is not simply an old $1 coin, and it was never intended to be an ordinary piece of pocket change. It was created at a moment when the United States was preparing to celebrate 2 centuries of independence, and the mint deliberately transformed the familiar Eisenhower dollar into a miniature national monument. The dual date, the portrait of Dwight D. Eisenhower, and the dramatic Liberty Bell rising against the surface of the moon turned this large dollar into a visual connection between America's revolutionary past and its technological future. But decades after the bicentennial celebration, another story began to emerge, one involving scarce varieties, unusually high-grade survivors, silver-clad versions, proof strikes, errors, and coins whose condition can make an enormous difference to collectors. Before we reach those numbers, however, it is important to understand why this particular dollar was made, how it was produced, and why 2 coins that look almost identical at first glance can occupy completely different positions in the collector market. Later, we will examine authenticated examples that have brought remarkable prices, and more importantly, the specific characteristics that allowed those coins to command them. The story begins with the approaching 200th anniversary of American independence. Congress authorized special bicentennial coinage under Public Law 93-127, calling for new reverse designs on the quarter, half dollar, and dollar, while retaining familiar portraits on the obverse. The Eisenhower dollar was an especially appropriate canvas because the coin already carried the likeness of Dwight D. Eisenhower, the World War II general who later became the nation's 34th president. The bicentennial program was also unusual because the special coins were dated 1976, even though production began during 1975. In other words, there is no regular Eisenhower dollar dated simply 1975. Mint production during that period included backdated 1974 dollars and the new dual-dated bicentennial issues. The mint wanted these coins distributed widely enough that ordinary Americans could participate in the national celebration, while Congress also required large numbers of 40% silver collector versions. Contemporary mint records show just how strong the public response became. Americans were buying and saving the new bicentennial coins at extraordinary rates, with officials reporting that much of the circulating production was being preserved rather than spent. That decision by the public would have an important consequence for collectors decades later, because enormous numbers survived in attractive condition. The design itself tells an even more fascinating story. On the obverse, Frank Gasparo's familiar portrait of Eisenhower faces left, surrounded by United States of America, Liberty, In God We Trust, and the historic dual date 1976. But turn the coin over and the visual language changes completely. Instead of the Apollo 11 Eagle and Moon design used on the normal Eisenhower dollar, the bicentennial reverse presents the Liberty Bell superimposed over the moon, accompanied by United States of America and $1. The winning concept came from Dennis R. Williams, a young artist whose design created a deliberate bridge between 2 defining moments in American history, the birth of the nation and the achievement of the Apollo program. Williams's initials, DRW, can be found near the bell's clapper. That combination of the Liberty Bell and moon is one reason this dollar remains so recognizable even among people who do not actively collect coins. Technically, the coin retained the traditional Eisenhower dollar's large format, measuring approximately 38.5 millimeters across, with a reeded edge and a weight of about 22.7 grams for the copper-nickel-clad version. The silver-clad collector version was heavier, around 24.6 grams, because its 40% silver composition used silver-bearing outer layers around a copper-rich core. And this is where the bicentennial dollar becomes much more interesting from a numismatic standpoint, because there was not just one version. The copper-nickel-clad circulation dollars were struck at Philadelphia and Denver, while San Francisco produced collector proofs and the special 40% silver issues. More importantly, the reverse underwent a lettering modification that created the two major varieties collectors called Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 has noticeably broader, more block-like lettering on the reverse, while Type 2 uses thinner, more refined lettering with serifs. The difference is easiest to see in the inscriptions United States of America and $1. Type 1 was produced first and in substantially smaller numbers for the circulation issues. PCGS records approximately 4.019 million Philadelphia Type 1 dollars, compared with more than 113 million Philadelphia Type 2 pieces, while Denver produced roughly 21.049 million Type 1 and 82.18 million Type 2 circulation dollars. That disparity matters because rarity in modern coinage often comes not from age, but from how many pieces survived in truly exceptional condition. The 1976 Type 2 dollar is common in lower mint state grades, but PCGS estimates dramatically fewer survivors at very high levels, with MS-67 examples becoming genuinely difficult. A collector examining one of these coins therefore needs to look beyond the date and ask a much more important question: which reverse variety is it, and how well was that particular coin preserved? The silver story adds another layer. San Francisco struck approximately 11,001,776 1976 Eisenhower dollars in 40% silver for collectors, all using the Type 1 reverse. These were not ordinary circulating silver dollars randomly mixed into bank rolls. They were specifically produced as numismatic issues and sold by the mint in bicentennial silver sets. The government marketed these coins as special commemorative products, and the original silver uncirculated three-piece sets were made widely available to the public. Their silver composition consists of 80% silver and 20% copper in the outer layers, with a copper-rich center, producing an overall alloy of 40% silver. Unlike the copper-nickel circulation version, a genuine silver-clad Ike generally has a different appearance along the edge and weighs more. But collectors should not rely on appearance alone. Some coins can tone dramatically over time, while cleaning, environmental exposure, or artificial treatment can alter the surface. A scale accurate to a fraction of a gram, a careful edge inspection, diameter measurement. In comparison with certified examples can provide useful preliminary evidence, but professional authentication becomes especially important when a supposedly rare silver, error, or high-grade specimen carries substantial financial expectations. The distinction matters because a normal bicentennial dollar may have little premium in circulated condition, while a spectacular certified example can enter an entirely different market. That difference becomes clear when condition enters the equation. Most bicentennial dollars were saved because Americans understood that they were historical souvenirs, and the mint itself reported that the public was collecting the circulating versions rather than spending them. As a result, simply finding an uncirculated-looking example does not automatically make it rare. Modern large dollars can acquire bag marks very easily during production, transportation, and storage, and tiny abrasions across Eisenhower's cheek, jaw, fields, or the reverse lettering can separate an MS-64 from a much more desirable MS-65 or MS-66. At the highest grades, collectors become increasingly sensitive to luster, surface preservation, strike sharpness, contact marks, and overall eye appeal. NGC notes that Eisenhower dollars can be challenging to grade because many were poorly made, and Philadelphia issues in particular can be difficult to locate with clean planchets and minimal marks. Color also matters, although it should never be confused with grade. Natural silver-clad tunning can produce attractive gold, pink, blue, green, or reddish hues, but artificial coloring or harsh chemical treatment can damage a coin desirability. A certified MS-66 or MS-67 example with original surfaces, strong detail, and attractive luster can therefore be worth dramatically more than a circulated dollar that technically carries the same dual date. Depending on variety, composition, certification, grade, and market conditions, an exceptional specimen might reach the four-figure range. For example, a genuinely high-end certified example around $1,850 would be a completely different proposition from an ordinary circulated dollar. The grade is not merely a number, it is the market's assessment of how much quality survived. The most dramatic values are reserved for coins that combine several desirable characteristics at once. A scarce variety in an unusually high grade can attract registry set collectors who are competing for the finest known or finest available examples. Certified auction history demonstrates that this is not merely theoretical. A 1976 S40% silver Eisenhower dollar graded MS-68 by PCGS realized $1,200 at a Stack's Bowers auction in 2020, an amount far above what an ordinary circulated bicentennial dollar would bring. PCGS also records an extraordinary $20,800 auction result for a 1976 S silver example graded MS-69, showing just how sharply the market can separate an elite condition rarity from a common specimen. That does not mean every 1976 S silver dollar is worth thousands of dollars. Quite the opposite, the extraordinary result exists because the coin occupied an exceptionally high grade and attracted the attention of advanced collectors. The same principle applies to errors and unusual varieties. A genuine off-center strike, wrong planchet, major doubled feature, missing clad layer, or other dramatic mint error can be valuable if it is authentic and significant, but minor machine doubling, post-mint damage, scratches, discoloration, or alterations are not automatically valuable errors. Authentication should therefore come before any major valuation claim. Professional grading services can examine the coin, certify its authenticity, assign a standardized grade, identify recognized varieties, and encapsulate it so future buyers have a reliable reference point. For collectors examining one of these dollars today, preservation is just as important as identification. Avoid polishing, rubbing, dipping without expert knowledge, or attempting to remove dark spots from the surface, because a coin that appears brighter after cleaning can actually become less desirable in the marketplace. Handle the piece by its edges, keep it in an inert holder designed for numismatic storage, and protect it from excessive humidity, heat, chemicals, and PVC-containing materials. If the coin appears to be a high-grade Type 1, a 40% silver issue, a proof, or a major mint error, resist the temptation to clean it before professional evaluation. Documentation also matters. Record where the coin came from, whether it was purchased raw or certified, and any previous auction or grading information that accompanies it. When comparing prices, use completed authenticated sales rather than asking prices from random online listings. A coin offered for $3,000 is not necessarily a $3,000 coin. The market value is established by what informed buyers actually paid for comparable pieces. The same discipline applies to claims of rarity. The existence of millions of surviving bicentennial dollars means that most examples are not rare simply because they are nearly 50 years old. What becomes scarce is the right combination of variety, grade, originality, strike, composition, and demand. A certified coin in the right grade might reasonably bring something like $2,650, while another example that looks almost identical to the untrained eye could remain close to its ordinary collector level. The difference is hidden in details that require careful examination. Ultimately, the 1976 Eisenhower Bicentennial dollar is valuable to collectors for a reason that goes far beyond the number printed on a price guide. It captures a remarkable moment when America looked backward toward the Revolution and forward toward the moon at exactly the same time. It was produced in enormous quantities, yet its major varieties, silver composition, proof issues, exceptional grades, and legitimate mint errors created a complex collecting landscape that still rewards careful research. The most important lesson is that the dual date alone does not create rarity. A circulated copper-nickel-clad example with ordinary may be worth little more than its face value to the right buyer, while a scarce Type 1, an elite mint state coin, a beautiful silver-clad specimen, or a dramatic authenticated error can command hundreds or even several $1,000s. In extraordinary cases, certified auction records show that the ceiling can be much higher, but those prices belong to exceptional coins, not to every bicentennial dollar carrying the same design. For anyone holding one today, the smartest approach is simple. Identify the mint, determine the composition, inspect the reverse lettering, examine the surfaces under good light, weigh the coin accurately, look for genuine mint-made anomalies rather than damage, and compare it with certified examples before assigning a value. What appears to be an ordinary $1 piece may turn out to be an important variety or condition rarity, but only careful numismatic evidence can tell that story. Next coin. Few American coins look as ordinary at first glance as the 1977 Eisenhower dollar, yet this large copper-nickel-clad piece sits at a fascinating crossroads in United States coinage, where presidential history, the legacy of the Apollo program, changing American commerce, and the approaching end of the large dollar all meet on a single piece of metal. By 1977, the excitement surrounding the bicentennial had faded, the special Liberty Bell and Moon reverse had disappeared, and the familiar Eisenhower dollar design had returned. But the coin itself was already becoming an awkward survivor in a country increasingly dependent on the $1 Federal Reserve note. That tension is exactly what makes the 1977 issue so interesting today. Millions were struck, yet truly exceptional examples are far less common than the mintage figures suggest, and a tiny number of extraordinary errors created a completely separate level of rarity. Later, we will look at the characteristics that determine whether an example is simply a collectible Eisenhower dollar or a coin capable of attracting serious advanced collectors, and we will examine authenticated auction results that demonstrate just how dramatically condition, variety, composition, certification, and rarity can change the market. The important point is that the date alone does not tell the story. With this coin, the story is hidden in the surfaces, the strike, the mint mark, and sometimes even in the metal beneath the design. To understand why the 1977 Eisenhower dollar matters, it helps to place it inside the economic and cultural atmosphere of the late 1970s. The United States was dealing with inflation, energy concerns, changing consumer habits, and an economy still adjusting to the shocks of the previous decade. At the same time, the government was trying to determine whether Americans could be persuaded to use dollar coins instead of paper dollars. The Eisenhower dollar had returned the denomination to the nation's coinage system in 1971 after the peace dollar had ended in 1935, but its enormous size, about 1.5 inches across, made it inconvenient for many everyday transactions. Vending machines, cash registers, and consumers were already accustomed to paper currency, while casinos in Nevada and certain areas of the American West provided some of the strongest practical demand for large dollar coins. By 1977, the mint was producing substantially fewer Eisenhower dollars than during the bicentennial period, and the writing was already on the wall for the series. Congress, the Treasury, and the Mint were considering a smaller dollar that could circulate more efficiently, eventually leading to the Susan B. Anthony dollar in 1979. The 1977 issue, therefore, belongs to the penultimate year of the Eisenhower series, giving it a historical importance that is easy to overlook when the coin is sitting in an old collection or forgotten bankroll. The physical character of the coin also explains why collectors approach it differently from smaller American denominations. The regular 1977 circulation dollar was made from copper-nickel-clad metal, outer layers containing 75% copper and 25% nickel were bonded to a core of pure copper. Its standard weight is approximately 22.68 grams. Its diameter is about 38.1 to 38.5 millimeters, depending on the published specification, and its edge is reeded. That combination produced a coin with substantial heft, broad open fields, and a distinctive silvery appearance without containing the silver found in the special 40% silver Eisenhower issues of earlier years. Frank Gasparro designed the obverse, showing President Dwight D. Eisenhower facing left, with Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date surrounding his portrait. His initials, FG, appear near the truncation of the bust and should not be mistaken for a mint mark. The reverse continues one of the most historically significant themes in modern American coinage, an eagle descending toward the lunar surface, surrounded by United States of America, EPLUBUSUNUM, and $1. The composition was based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia designed by astronaut Michael Collins, while Gasparo translated that concept into the coin's final artwork. The eagle and moon were more than decorative elements. They linked American political leadership with the nation's extraordinary technological achievement of reaching the lunar surface in 1969. By 1977, that moon image had become part of the visual identity of the Eisenhower dollar itself. Production took place at Philadelphia and Denver for circulation, with the Philadelphia issue carrying no mint mark and the Denver coin displaying a small d on the obverse. Philadelphia produced 12,596,000 examples, while Denver struck 32,983,006, making the Denver issue considerably more plentiful in absolute numbers. Yet raw mintage is only the beginning of the rarity conversation, because Eisenhower dollars were large, heavy, and transporting in bags or other bulk containers. Freshly struck coins could collide with one another and acquire contact marks before they ever reached the public. This is one of the reasons high-grade examples can become much scarcer than the original production numbers imply. The Philadelphia issue is particularly interesting because its upper-grade population narrows sharply as the grade rises, and PCGS records an auction result of $3,600 for a 1977 Philadelphia dollar graded MS-67 at a Stack's Bowers sale in 2021. The Denver issue has also produced spectacular results, including a verified $7,637.50 heritage auctions result for an MS-67 example in 2013. Those numbers should never be interpreted as normal values for the date. They represent elite certified coins at grades that are dramatically more difficult to locate than ordinary circulated examples. In fact, PCGS estimates roughly 32.9 million surviving 1977 D dollars overall, but only about 7,500 at MS-65 or better, illustrating how quickly the population can contract when the standard becomes true gem quality rather than simply an uncirculated appearance. That brings us to one of the most important distinctions in Eisenhower collecting. A coin can be technically uncirculated and still fall well short of the quality that advanced collectors want. Mint state grading begins at MS-60 and progresses upward through MS-61, MS-62, MS-63, MS-64, MS-65, MS-66, and the increasingly elusive MS-67 and beyond, with the exact availability depending on the issue. At the lower mint state levels, scattered marks, duller luster, weak areas, or unattractive surfaces can keep a coin from becoming desirable. Around MS-64 and MS-65, collectors begin demanding cleaner fields, stronger luster, better overall preservation, and a more attractive strike. At MS-66, imperfections become much harder to overlook, and at MS-67, even tiny distractions can separate one coin from another. The broad fields of an Eisenhower dollar act almost like a mirror for damage, making every bag mark visible under proper lighting. Original luster is another major factor. A coin with bright, undisturbed mint bloom can look dramatically better than one that has been cleaned or chemically altered, even if both retain similar technical detail. Natural tunning may occur over the decades, and collectors can appreciate attractive coloration when it is original and stable, but artificial color, polishing, harsh cleaning, or surface manipulation can reduce desirability. This is why an ordinary circulated piece may remain near face value, while a truly exceptional certified example could enter the four-figure market. A hypothetical coin meeting the right combination of grade and eye appeal might attract interest around $1,300, but that figure would belong to the specific certified coin, not to every 1977 Eisenhower dollar. Current NGC guidance likewise shows how dramatically values rise with grade, while ordinary circulated examples remain close to face value. There is another reason this date deserves careful examination. The 1977 D Eisenhower dollar is associated with one of the most important transitional eras in the entire series. A small number of Denver coins were accidentally struck on 40% silver-clad planchets left over from earlier Bicentennial production. These planchets were intended for special silver-clad issues, not ordinary 1977 D-circulation dollars, making their appearance in Denver's production stream an extraordinary mint error rather than a normal variety. PCGS estimates approximately 10 to 15 examples exist, placing this error in a completely different category from the millions of regular copper-nickel-clad coins. The physical differences can be significant. A genuine 40% silver planchet weighs more than the normal clad planchet, and the edge can provide important clues because of the different layered construction. But weight alone is never sufficient proof. Counterfeiters and altered coins can create convincing appearances, and a valuable Eisenhower error should be authenticated by a major grading service or another recognized specialist before a collector assigns it a substantial value. The documented auction history shows why caution matters. A 1977 D Eisenhower struck on a 40% silver planchet and graded MS63 by NGC realized $12,925 at Heritage Auctions in February 2014, while another example, graded AU55 by PCGS, sold for $3,738 in 2004. These are legitimate, documented results, but they belong specifically to the rare silver planchet era. They do not establish a value for an ordinary copper-nickel 1977 D dollar. In the same way, a suspected off-center strike, doubled feature, clipped planchet, or unusual surface should never be called a valuable mint error simply because it looks different. Collectors must first establish that the feature originated during the minting process rather than from damage after the coin entered circulation. For the collector searching for an ordinary 1977 Eisenhower dollar, the most productive approach is therefore one based on examination rather than excitement. First determine whether the coin is Philadelphia or Denver, then inspect the date and mint mark area, the fields around Eisenhower's portrait, and the large surfaces surrounding the Apollo reverse. Look for original luster rather than artificially bright surfaces, and examine the coin under angled light to reveal contact marks that may disappear under direct illumination. A precise digital scale can help identify obvious weight anomalies, but any unusual result should be checked against the accepted tolerance before drawing conclusions. Diameter and edge inspection can provide additional information, especially when a coin is suspected of being struck on the wrong planchet. Magnification is useful for studying possible doubling, die cracks, clash marks, or other abnormalities, but collectors should learn the difference between a true die characteristic and mechanical damage. Storage is equally important. Handle the coin by its edges, avoid touching the fields, never polish it, and keep it in an inert holder that does not contain PVC. Humidity, chemicals, fingerprints, and improper plastics can gradually alter the surfaces. If a coin appears unusually sharp and clean, or if it might represent a major error, preserving the original surfaces is more important than making it look brighter. Even among certified coins, values can vary with eye appeal and market demand. A strong MS66 specimen could command several $100s in the right circumstances, while an exceptional coin approaching the finest known grades might move toward a value such as $2,750 or more. But the final market result depends on the exact certification, population, auction environment, and buyer competition. What ultimately makes the 1977 Eisenhower dollar compelling is the contradiction built into its survival. More than 45 million regular circulation examples were produced between Philadelphia and Denver, yet the coin was never especially successful as everyday money. Many were saved in mint sets, stored in rolls, placed into collections, or simply forgotten in drawers, while others experienced the bumps and abrasions of circulation and eventually disappeared from active use. The United States Mint sold 2,006,869 uncirculated sets for the year, giving collectors another source of preserved examples, but preservation does not automatically equal rarity. The real challenge is finding pieces that combine originality, strong strike, clean surfaces, attractive luster, and a grade high enough to stand apart from the enormous surviving population. For advanced collectors, that challenge creates competition, particularly when a coin reaches the highest certified grades or when a documented error enters the market. A remarkable regular strike example might bring something around $3,400 if its certification, grade, and eye appeal place it among the most desirable survivors, while a completely different 1977D silver planchet error can command many times that amount because its rarity is fundamentally different. The long-term appeal of this coin rests on that layered story. It represents the final years of the large Eisenhower dollar, carries a design born from the triumph of Apollo 11, reflects America's unsuccessful attempt to make the large dollar a practical circulating denomination, and preserves one of the most intriguing wrong planchet errors of the modern era. For collectors, the lesson is simple but powerful. Never judge a 1977 Eisenhower dollar solely by its date, its face value, or the fact that millions were made. Study the mint mark, metal, surfaces, strike, grade, and provenance. Compare the coin with verified population and auction records. And whenever a potentially rare characteristic appears, authenticate it before trusting the price. That is where an ordinary-looking copper-nickel-clad dollar can transform from a piece of 20th century pocket change into a serious and historically meaningful numismatic discovery. Last coin, there is a reason experienced collectors rarely look at a 1971 Eisenhower dollar as simply a large $1 coin. At first glance, it appears straightforward: the portrait of a former president, a familiar date, a broad silver-colored surface, and an eagle rising over the moon on the reverse. But once the coin is placed under proper light and examined the way a numismatist examines it, the details begin to separate ordinary examples from coins that can become genuinely important to collectors. The mint mark, the composition, the sharpness of the strike, the preservation of the enormous fields, the quality of the original luster, and even subtle design characteristics can completely change the identity of the piece in the collector marketplace. The 1971 issue is especially fascinating because it launched the Eisenhower dollar series after a 36-year gap in US dollar coin production, and it was simultaneously made in copper-nickel-clad form for circulation and silver-clad form for collectors. Later, we will trace exactly how those versions were produced, examine the varieties and authenticated errors that serious collectors pursue, and look at documented auction results that reveal why exceptional examples can command impressive sums. But before assigning any value to the coin in front of us, we have to determine exactly what it is, and that investigation begins with the historical moment that created the Ike dollar. The Eisenhower dollar was born during a period when America was dealing with profound economic and political change. In 1970, Congress authorized a new dollar coin honoring Dwight D. Eisenhower, the World War II commander who had become the nation's 34th president and remained one of the most recognizable American figures of the 20th century. Eisenhower had died in 1969, the same year Apollo 11 carried American astronauts to the moon, and lawmakers deliberately connected those two parts of the national story. The new dollar became the first U.S. circulating dollar coin to feature a presidential portrait and the first circulating dollar coin produced by the mint without silver or gold. It also represented an attempt to restore the dollar coin to American commerce after the peace dollar had ended in 1935. The timing was complicated. Inflation was becoming a major concern. The nation was adjusting to the economic consequences of the Vietnam era, and silver had already been removed from circulating dimes and quarters, while the half-dollar had been moved to a clad composition. The mint, therefore, had to create a large dollar that could be produced economically without relying on precious metal for its circulation version. The result was a coin that looked like silver, but was fundamentally different from the classic silver dollars Americans had known for generations. That distinction would become one of the first things collectors needed to investigate. Now look closely at the coin's physical structure, because the metal itself provides one of the strongest clues to its identity. A standard 1971 circulation Eisenhower dollar weighs approximately 22.7 grams, measures about 38.5 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge. Its copper-nickel-clad construction consists of outer layers containing 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded over a pure copper center. That layered structure is fundamentally different from the 40% silver Eisenhower dollars produced for collectors at San Francisco. The regular circulation pieces were struck at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, while the collector silver issues came from San Francisco. On the circulation coins, Philadelphia generally has no mint mark, Denver carries a D, and San Francisco issues carry an S. This makes the mint mark one of the first details an experienced collector checks. But the design is equally important. Frank Gasparo, the mint's chief engraver, created the obverse portrait of Eisenhower facing left. The reverse was based on the Apollo 11 mission insignia, designed by astronaut Michael Collins and adapted for the coin by Gasparo. It shows an eagle descending toward the cratered lunar surface with an olive branch in its claws, surrounded by United States of America, EPLURIBUS UNUM, and $1. The symbolism is unusually direct. The obverse honors the general and president, while the reverse commemorates one of the greatest technological achievements in American history. The coin is therefore both a presidential memorial and a miniature record of the space age. The next question is whether $1971 was actually made and how many survived. Philadelphia struck 47,799,000 regular 1971 Eisenhower dollars, while Denver produced 68,587,424 regular 1971 D pieces. San Francisco also produced collector versions, including silver-clad uncirculated and proof coins. That production history immediately tells us why a normal 1971 Philadelphia or Denver dollar is not automatically rare simply because it is more than half a century old. Millions entered the marketplace, and many were saved by the public. Yet large production numbers can be deceptive when the standard is raised from survival to exceptional condition. Eisenhower dollars are particularly vulnerable to contact marks because of their enormous surfaces and because newly struck coins could collide during handling and transportation. A coin can leave the press with brilliant luster and a strong strike, only to acquire abrasions before it ever reaches a bank. This is why the experienced collector studies the open fields around Eisenhower's portrait, the cheek and jawline, the reverse fields surrounding the eagle, and the high points of the design. A coin that appears flawless from arm's length may reveal a constellation of tiny marks under magnification. Conversely, a carefully preserved example with clean fields, powerful luster, and superior strike quality can become scarce at the highest certified grades. PCGS records a $10,281 auction result for a 1971 Philadelphia example graded MS66+, while a 1971 D reached $10,200 at MS67+. Those are not ordinary prices for the date. They demonstrate how dramatically the market can change when a common issue becomes an elite condition rarity. That leads directly into the language collectors use when evaluating condition. A circulated 1971 Eisenhower dollar may show friction on Eisenhower's cheek, hair, jaw, and the highest portions of the reverse eagle, along with flattened luster and scattered contact marks. An uncirculated coin retains its original mint state surfaces, but mint state does not mean perfect. Grades such as MS60 through MS64 can contain substantial marks, while MS65 generally demands a much stronger overall appearance. At MS66, surface preservation becomes significantly more demanding, and at MS67, the coin must be extraordinarily clean for such a large, difficult-to-protect format. Original mint luster is especially important because the broad fields allow light to reveal whether the surfaces remain untouched. Collectors also consider calc and tunning. Copper-nickel-clad Eisenhower dollars can develop gray, gold, amber, or other natural coloration from storage environments, and attractive original tunning may enhance eye appeal, while harsh cleaning or artificial alteration can have the opposite effect. Proof and silver-clad examples follow additional grading considerations, including cameo and deep cameo designations, when the contrast between frosted devices and mirrored fields meets professional standards. The crucial lesson is that a coin's value cannot be estimated responsibly from photographs alone, and certainly not from a date and month by themselves. A certified example with exceptional preservation might enter a four-figure market. For illustration, a particularly desirable coin around $1,600 could attract serious attention, but another coin carrying exactly the same date and month could be worth vastly less because of grade, damage, cleaning, or weak eye appeal. Professional certification turns those subjective observations into a standardized assessment that buyers can compare. But the 1971 Eisenhower series becomes even more intricate when we separate the regular circulation coins from the San Francisco silver issues. The mint produced special silver-clad dollars containing an overall 40% silver alloy, with the outer layers composed of 80% silver and 20% copper around a copper-rich center. These collector coins were deliberately manufactured as premium products rather than ordinary circulation money. The mint announced plans for 130 million uncirculated silver dollars and 20 million proofs across the authorized program, and the special pieces were sold above face value. The proof manufacturing process was also substantially different. Polished blanks were hand-fed into specially prepared presses and struck with highly polished dies, producing the mirror-like fields and sharper visual contrast associated with proof coinage. For collectors examining a 1971 silver dollar today, weight becomes a useful preliminary clue because the silver-clad version weighs approximately 24.6 grams, compared with about 22.7 grams for the regular clad dollar. However, weight should never be treated as absolute authentication by itself. Genuine coins can vary within tolerance, while counterfeiters can manipulate weight or construction. A suspicious piece should be compared with known genuine examples, and when significant money is involved, submitted to a respected professional grading service. The San Francisco issues also contain collectible varieties, including the famous peg leg variety and other documented die varieties, while some silver issues exist in cameo and deep cameo proof formats. A spectacular certified proof or rare variety can move well into the collector market. Documented high-end 1971 silver proofs have reached several $1,000s, including a $13,800 Heritage Auctions result for a PR68 example in 2024. That result belongs to a specific certified proof and should never be interpreted as the normal value of every 1971 silver dollar. For an investigator holding an ungraded 1971 Eisenhower dollar, the most important habit is to resist the urge to decide what the coin is worth before identifying what it actually is. Start with the date and month, then determine whether the coin is the standard copper-nickel clad issue or a silver-clad San Francisco collector piece. Examine the edge for the expected reeded pattern and inspect the exposed edge carefully for clues about the layered metal construction. Weigh the coin with a precise scale, measure it when necessary, and compare the result against reliable specifications. Under magnification, study the lettering, date, portrait, eagle, moon, and surrounding fields for legitimate die characteristics or possible mint-made errors. Do not automatically assume that doubling, a strange line, a crack, or a damaged rim is an error. Post-mint damage is common, and many apparent varieties disappear under expert examination. One genuine variety of interest is the 1971 D-Friendly Eagle, a recognized Type 1 reverse die variety documented by PCGS. The 1971 silver issues also include recognized varieties such as peg leg and repunched muntmuck varieties, and PCGS records a $8,812.50 result for a 1971 silver RPM example graded MS67. These documented varieties demonstrate why specialized attribution matters. Preservation is equally critical. Never polish the coin, scrape the surface, dip it casually, or attempt to make it shine. Fingerprints can permanently affect surfaces, while PVC-containing holders and poor storage conditions can create long-term problems. Store valuable pieces in inert, archival-quality holders, handle them only by the edges, and keep them away from moisture and chemicals. If the coin appears unusually rare, preserve it exactly as found until a professional can evaluate it. When all of these clues are brought together, the 1971 Eisenhower dollar becomes much more than a large coin from the early 1970s. It is the opening chapter of America's final major large-size circulating dollar era, a coin born from the memory of Dwight Eisenhower and the triumph of Apollo 11, and a remarkable experiment in replacing traditional silver with modern clad technology. The regular Philadelphia and Denver issues can be surprisingly common in lower grades, yet their finest survivors become much more elusive because large fields magnify every imperfection. The San Francisco silver issues introduce an entirely different collecting branch, with proof finishes, silver composition, recognized varieties, and elite grades creating their own hierarchy. The auction record makes the lesson unmistakable. Documented 1971 Eisenhower dollars have reached approximately $10,000 or more when condition or variety is extraordinary, while special silver proofs have also produced five-figure results. At a more practical level, a hypothetical certified coin in an attractive high grade might command something such as $2,900, but only if its authentication, grade, originality, eye appeal, and current buyer demand support that level. A circulated example with the same date could remain close to face value, and even an uncirculated coin can fall far short of the finest grade market. That is why collectors do not simply ask, "What is a 1971 Eisenhower dollar worth?" They ask a much more precise series of questions. Which mint made it? What metal is it? Which variety is present? How strong is the strike? How original are the surfaces? How much luster survives? What grade would a professional service assign? Is there a legitimate mint error or recognized die variety? And finally, how does the coin compare with authenticated examples that collectors have actually purchased? Those questions transform an ordinary-looking Ike dollar into an investigation, and they explain why this enormous coin still commands attention from serious numismatists more than 5 decades after it first entered American commerce.